Understanding Masculine Psychology by Robert A. Johnson is a key to understanding the crisis of modern masculinity through the lens of myths and Jungian psychology. Johnson decodes the archetypes of Parsifal, the Grail, and the Knight's Journey, showing how these ancient images explain men's fears, immaturity, and search for meaning. If you want to understand your inner conflicts, relationships with your father or partners, this book will be a map for a journey deep into the masculine psyche. Interestingly, Robert Johnson is not only a Jungian analyst, but also the first Western student of an Indian guru, which allowed him to combine depth psychology with Eastern wisdom. The book he was born from his personal crisis. After a divorce, he went to India, where he realized that modern men, like Parsifal, often wander in the forest without understanding their true nature. Curiously, the manuscript was initially intended only for a narrow circle of patients, but became a global bestseller, translated into 18 languages. Part 1. The Mythological Foundation. Rule 1. Parsifal and the Grail. The archetype of immaturity. The story of Parsifal becomes a mirror for the modern man who, like the legendary knight, often acts impulsively without understanding the depth of what is happening. The myth reveals a key problem, the inability to ask the right questions at a crucial moment, which symbolizes emotional immaturity. The questioning technique suggests consciously formulating 3 deep questions to oneself before important decisions. What am I truly feeling? What are the consequences of my choice? Who does this truly serve? The conscious delay practice teaches one to pause between impulse and action to avoid Parsifal's mistake, blindly following duty without understanding the meaning. For example, a man rushing to propose marriage out of a sense of obligation consciously takes a month to reflect. During this time, he realizes that he was guided not by love, but by the fear of loneliness. Rule 2. The Knight's Path. Initiation into masculine maturity. The initiation rituals in ancient cultures show that a boy becomes a man not through biological aging, but through the symbolic death of childhood illusions. Modern society has lost these rites, leaving men suspended between youth and maturity. The self-initiation method includes 3 stages: voluntary exit from the comfort zone, the ordeal, a period of isolation for reflection, retreat into the cave, and return with new status, integration of experience. The inner mentor technique suggests creating an imaginary council of wise masculine figures, real or archetypal, for complex decisions. For example, a 30-year-old man goes on a solo trip with a minimal budget. Physical difficulties and solitude become a catalyst for his emotional maturation. Rule 3. The shadow of the masculine psyche, meeting the demons. The shadow in Jungian psychology is the repressed aspects of the personality that, being unconscious, sabotage behavior. For men, this is often aggression, addiction, or conversely, excessive softness, everything that was denied as unworthy of a true man. The dialogue with the shadow practice involves a written conversation with one's rejected part to understand its hidden motives. The controlled manifestation technique allows for safely expressing repressed qualities, for example, through sports for aggression or creativity for sensitivity. The key rule is not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate its energy. For example, a businessman, proud of his composure, begins to paint abstract pictures in moments of anger, thus finding a constructive outlet for emotions that previously manifested as passive aggression. Conclusion for part 1. The first part of the book reveals the archetypal roots of masculine crises. Parsifal's infantilism, the lack of initiation, and the war with one's own shadow. Myths here are not just stories, but diagnostic tools showing where and why the modern man gets stuck. The practices offer concrete ways to work with these challenges through conscious questioning, rites of passage, and dialogue with the rejected parts of the self. An important emphasis: masculine maturity begins not with victories over external enemies, but with internal work, where the main feat is honesty with oneself. Part 2. Psychological aspects. Rule 4. Relationship with the anima, the feminine in man. The anima is the archetypal image of the feminine principle in the male psyche, which influences the perception of women and emotional life. The unconscious anima manifests through projections, when a man seeks in his partner what he has not integrated into himself. Mature relationships are only possible after recognizing these projections. The dialogue with the anima technique suggests imagining an internal feminine figure and having a conversation with her, recording the answers. The mirror reflection practice helps notice which qualities in women evoke strong emotions. This indicates unconscious aspects of one's own psyche. It is important to distinguish between the real woman and projections. For example, a man disillusioned with relationships realizes that he was looking for a savior in his partner. Through work with the anima, he learns to take responsibility for his own happiness, which changes the nature of his relationships. Rule 5, father and son. Rupture and healing of the connection. The relationship with the father forms masculine identity. His absence, physical or emotional, creates a father wound. Modern men often suffer either from authoritarian suppression or the complete absence of a fatherly example. Healing begins with acknowledging this wound. The symbolic reunion method involves writing an unsent letter to the father, expressing all feelings. The rebirth of fatherhood technique suggests creating an internal image of a good enough father, even if the real experience was traumatic. The key is not in judgment, but in understanding. For example, a 40-year-old man who grew up without a father begins to notice how he repeats his pattern of avoidance. Realizing this, he consciously builds closeness with his son. Rule 6, male friendship, the sacred brotherhood. Genuine male friendship in the modern world is often replaced by superficial socializing or business connections. The archetype of the sacred brotherhood, like the Knights of the Round Table, implies depth, mutual honesty, and joint growth. Without such support, a man remains emotionally isolated. The trust circle practice creates a space where men can share vulnerability without fear of judgment. The ritual communication technique introduces traditions of regular meetings with a specific structure. For example, discussing life challenges over a ritual glass of wine. It is important to go beyond conversations about work and sports. For example, a group of friends introduces the honest hour rule once a month. They meet to discuss not external achievements, but internal experiences, which qualitatively changes the level of trust. Conclusion for part 2. The second part explores the key relationships that form the masculine psyche with the feminine principle, the father and friends. Work with the anima helps escape the captivity of projections. Healing the father wound restores integrity, and genuine friendship creates a foundation for development. The idea of consciousness unites these themes. Only through understanding one's deep patterns can one build healthy relationships. The practices offer concrete tools for this work, from imaginary dialogues to creating new forms of communication. An important emphasis: masculine psychology is formed in relationships, and maturation occurs precisely through the reevaluation of these connections. Part 3. Integration. Rule 7. Mature masculinity. Beyond the myth. Maturity in masculine psychology is not a final state, but a process of balancing between opposites: strength and vulnerability, responsibility and freedom, tradition and innovation. The modern world requires flexibility from men, which cannot be found in the rigid archetypes of the past. The dialectical synthesis technique suggests finding third paths between polarities, for example, combining knightly discipline with the sensitivity of an artist. The role experimentation practice allows one to try on different behavioral models in a safe environment to expand the repertoire of reactions. The key principle: masculinity as a palette, not a template. For example, a company leader, accustomed to an authoritarian style, begins to practice flexible leadership, maintaining decisiveness in crises, but learning to delegate and admit mistakes in ordinary work. Rule 8. Modern challenges. Man in the 21st century. The digital age has created new traps for masculine identity. Virtual hypermasculinity on social media, substituting real achievements with their simulation, and the crisis of traditional social roles. At the same time, unique opportunities have opened up for rethinking masculinity outside rigid frameworks. The digital detox method helps restore connection with real experiences through periodic disconnections from virtual competitiveness. The identity reassembly technique suggests consciously constructing one's masculine role from elements of different cultures and eras. It is important not to reject modernity, but to consciously adapt eternal principles to new conditions. For example, a gamer who spends 8 hours a day in online battles begins to transfer the heroic archetype to reality, signing up for rock climbing and volunteering, finding genuine challenges. Conclusion for part 3. The concluding part of the book shows that genuine integration is not a return to a mythical golden age of masculinity, but a creative adaptation of ancient truths to modernity. The techniques work not to simplify, but to complicate masculine identity, the ability to hold paradoxes, choosing not between, but both and. The practices offer concrete tools for this, from the conscious use of technology to experiments with new forms of self-realization. The key message: the man of the future is neither a warrior nor a victim of circumstances, but a conscious creator of his destiny who knows how to extract wisdom from traditions without becoming their captive. This is such a wonderful book. I have compiled a separate list of all the important theses from this book, along with all the techniques and tools, and created a step-by-step action plan that you can immediately implement in your life. You can get all this in my community, Place of Power. There, you will find a detailed text analysis with similar lists for each book being reviewed. The community has already thoroughly analyzed and made available to you hundreds of world bestsellers, with a new analysis released every day. Follow the link in the description and use it.